I've absolutely fallen in love with Genshin Impact. It's a game of freedom and promise. Freedom because that's a major theme of the game, and promise because there's a lot more that this game needs to be. And I'm pretty sure it will become that. But it's important to talk about how this free-to-play, open-world, anime-themed action RPG is also a gacha game. And, you know, freedom's the major theme of the first area you go to, which is Mondstadt, and yeah, this is like the green area. You know, this is the one that feels most like, you know, you're right in Breath of the Wild, which is also very green. This is the first like 40 hours of the game, maybe, or a bit less than that, where everything feels great, and it's a good time. You have all the story to your access, but once you hit a certain level, the gacha game elements start to hit, and there is gambling involved in this game, so it's definitely not for everybody. But the second area in the game, and you know, it's really cool, Liu. But this also has another theme that's kind of relevant to the game, and this area is renowned for its god of contracts. And installing this game is basically signing a contract saying, you know, I'm willing to invest hours of my life and possibly my wallet. So that's just what you need to know. And you may think I'm exaggerating that like this game is a meta commentary itself with like the 2 starting regions. But I don't think I'm exaggerating, because I've read the Honkai Impact webcomic, which is what the Chinese developers MiYoYo also made. And the webcomic has this one scene in the first story arc where the Overseer Oto just opens like this forbidden library, and like there's magical whales just like flying through the library. Whales! Huh. What do gacha games need to survive? Whales. Huh. And then like this evil entity that's trying to like entice him that he should like sell his soul to access this forbidden knowledge is saying, you want new Valkyries? You want new characters that you have to gamble? New waifus and husbandos? To build an army to defend the world? Well, I have a deal for you. So, yeah, I think MiYoYo is very aware of what this game is asking for, and yeah, this game is going to make millions of dollars. It's been the most successful internationally launched Chinese game ever. Nevertheless, there is like 40 hours of free content that's amazing. There's so much fun to be had in the loop of exploration, combat, and then the story on top of it, which is really well produced and it looks great. But I'll talk more about the story as I dive into the themes later. There's a bit of a chapter select in this video if you want to speed through it, but I'm going to go over the basics of the combat, which make up the core of the game. And compared to other gacha games, I find it actually enjoyable. Most gacha games are simple mobile games that, you know, I'm thinking of Fate Go, for example, you just choose like 3 different cards. Not very exciting to me. Here's how Genshin Impact works. The basics of the combat is you have up to 4 characters in the party, and you can switch in between them in combat, which allows you to react with different elements in the game. There are about 6 elements relevant in the game right now. Some react to cause more damage. Ice and water, for example, can freeze larger opponents. And it's a pretty intuitive system, but it keeps things fresh because you can change how you play, change the party around, and suddenly you have, you know, a different playstyle. So with different enemies requiring different approaches, the combat is just pretty fun in general. That doesn't mean to say every time I start this game it's a fresh and exciting session. I've basically explored the 2 out of the 7 regions that's already in the game. So, like I said, there's a lot of promise. It's a live service game, it's in development, and so far a lot of the content is recycled, and it doesn't feel like it's as good as it should be. And the Ascension rank I'm at basically means I only have like these side quests and daily commissions to do, and then beyond that there isn't that much beyond like getting the material to level up characters and whatnot. So for some people you're going to enjoy that 40 hours of free content, and then you're going to want to stop playing until more content is released, when it will be. But for me personally, I actually do enjoy this like grind every day that maybe requires like an hour session and then I'm done for the day. Not gonna lie, I enjoy my mindless playing and throwing up a podcast, and this is just a pretty game to play. I mean, I can go around, kill monsters, level up, complete battle pass challenges. You know, it's exactly what I need to get through all the podcasts I like listening to. So once you reach this point in the game, a lot of people are frustrated because the Rezon system in this game is terrible. You have 120 at max, It's going to be increased a little to 160 in the next update, but this basically means you can do 4 to 6 things that give you rewards to level up your characters, get more artifacts. You can probably get all of this done in like maybe 20 minutes if you speedrun it, and then you have nothing else to do that entire day. I do think this will be made better in the game later, because it's not like if you had unlimited resin there would be much to do in the game anyways at this point. If you've explored the entire world, there really isn't like that many ways to spend resin right now to begin with, to need that much resin. But the system as it stands right now does feel very stingy because there's really no other way to get rewards or level. You even run out of the gold in this game, the Mora, as you level your character. Like you're just like, oh, I'm out of gold. It's gone. So there's just like a lot of walls you hit. There's like an endless spiral in this game, which is, you know, where I found like the combat actually kind of interesting. Like it's an actual challenge. But that challenge is also artificial because the only way to get past it is to level your characters, which makes it kind of fun because I'm like, yeah, I gotta level my characters more. But then you realize, oh, I need resin. So it's just like, I'll have to wait weeks and weeks. So, you know, it's kind of a good loop there, I guess. But at the same time, for other people, it's really frustrating. That's going to take 2 weeks to level their characters to get to the point they need to not be like walled off by fighting these enemies. So it could all be a bit better. And then on top of the resin, we have to talk about the gacha system and how the rates are extremely low. You have about like a 6% chance to get a 5-star character. You're guaranteed a 4-star every 10 rolls, and that 4-star doesn't necessarily have to be a character. It could just be like a weapon, and then you feel awful. This game is very stingy in general on how many Primogems you can get. You can get a lot of Primogems by doing the story and exploring, but then you come to a point where you basically get the most Primogems from just doing the commissions, which are daily. And if you log in daily, you don't even get 1 roll technically, you get like almost 1 roll. So per day, you're maybe getting 1 to 2 rolls. And how many rolls do you need to be guaranteed a 5-star? You need to roll 90 times, which is the pity system. So to roll a 5-star, you had a 0.6% chance. Well, with the pity factored in, it's about like a 1.6% chance that you get a 5-star. So the amount Primogems cost, which I think is like almost $1 for like every roll, is totally not worth it unless you're like an otaku who is also a Saudi prince who has thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend on this game. And then you'll get like all the characters. But if you're not that, like everybody else, yeah, it's not a good way to spend money. It's gambling. You're not even guaranteed to get what you want or anything good at all. The only guarantee that I think people calculated is that you're guaranteed the character on the banner, the 5-star one, if you roll 180 times. So if you roll 180 times, I think that's like $200. So for $200 you're guaranteed the character banner. That's kind of insane. That's... no. How about no? There are other ways this game is monetized, and they're kind of preferable. Like there's the battle pass you can spend to unlock, which gives you pretty decent rewards. And it would just be better if the game was more geared towards that stuff than dumping all your money into the gambling aspect. It'd be really preferable if it was like a subscription-based free-to-play game, or you buy skins, you know, cosmetic stuff. But it seems like those stuff will be in the game along with the horrible gacha system with terrible rates. So, you know, there's a lot to complain about there. But, you know, that's how gacha game works, unfortunately. If you play for free, you're probably going to get 3 to 4 5-star characters a year, maybe, and that's about it. Every other character, you'll never get to play except in a trial run, so yeah, that's how it is. There's one moment I think a lot of people love. It's when you enter the Knights of Favonius headquarters, and then you stumble into the room, the library of Lisa, and all the books are just there to be ransacked. There's an explicit warning that you should return all the books, but you're not going to. You're going to be reading all this lore over the course of your journey. You're going to be finding more and more books throughout the adventure. And honestly, this might sound nerdy, but like, as this live service game develops, like, more lore books being added is kind of one of the more exciting things to me. I don't know why, but this world is just so dense. And since this channel is called Weeb Revolution, I just gotta say, this game's very based. From what I understand, people in China just study dialectics in school, so like, it's in this game. One of the most explicit things that people have noticed is that you open up the book, expressly says that they distribute resources to each according to his needs, and that's in quotes. So this mob, the Hilly Trolls, practices primitive communism. It's unfortunate that most of the game is killing this mob, but it's a video game, so I don't think there's much helping that. There's this one commission you can do where you help a linguist and you come to a mutual understanding. So it'd be nice to see if in the future game there's more quests like that where you actually interact with them peacefully, because I don't know why they need to be killed. Like, they literally do nothing wrong throughout the entire story. You see them harassing villagers and like blocking roads and stuff, but they never kill anyone or anything. They're practicing primitive communism. They're cool. And then the entire society of Mondstadt, you have to understand, is insane. Like, the society as it is right now might as well be like an anarchist wet dream, but it's even more principled than that. You know, they do have the Knights of Favonius, which is like a principled cadre of knights, and they have a strict principle that they have to follow. If you think about like the typical fantasy setting, and when you have like guards or something, like the guards are always an institution of just enforcement, similar to police, and it's an institution to oppress the people and maintain the aristocracy. But as we'll get into the lore of what Mondstadt is, the aristocracy has been basically done away with, and the Knights of Favonius are expressly only there to serve the people, and they are duty bound to do that. Like, this guidebook isn't that specific. It's mostly about how they're supposed to be civil and respect outsiders, respect citizens, and use the correct wording. It's kind of humorous in that way, but it's very clear that like they are very, very strict on how they conduct themselves, and that if you don't conduct yourself the right way or you treat someone wrongly, you know, you're kicked out of the Knights. You did not uphold your duty of protecting the freedom of Mondstadt. Recently I was reading Xi Jinping's Governance of China, and in talking about strengthening party discipline, he mentions eliminating the 4 maleficents, which is a new thing I learned about. And eliminating these 4 things is really like in line with what this handbook says. So they refer to going through the motions, excessive bureaucracy, self-indulgence, and extravagance. And this handbook basically says that if you're just going through the motions, then like you're not a true knight. Like, you have to be on like point every second of your job, even when you're like out to go drinking. Apparently, that's how strict this handbook suggests you should be. Obviously, I don't think the Knights of Favonius is a very bureaucratic organization to begin with. The acting Grand Maester Jean, for example, who's overseeing like the entire Knights of Favonius, is not just a bureaucrat there for her own self-gain. She's actively doing everything she can for the people, and to the point where she's overworking herself and literally getting sick in one of her quests. So her dedication is like insane, and she expects that out of every other knight. They're really forbidden for self-indulgence and express that they need to be moderate in everything they do. Such as when they go drinking, they need another knight to be with them to just make sure everything's going smoothly. In extravagance, none of that is allowed, of course. So that's how strict this handbook is. But how exactly was this order established, and why is freedom so emphasized in this society? Well, we'll have to go through the history. I actually want to do a reading of one of the books in this game, The History of Kings and Clans Prologue. Because the history of Mondstadt went through multiple phases. There are so many years of history and lore to go through that reading a book will just be much more effective than just laying it all out. So let me just do that. It'll take a minute, so that's how long this text is. During the time of the aristocracy, the tyrants who ruled Mondstadt spurned the study of history and forbade the people from speech and song that alluded to historical events, for they knew the extent of their own degeneracy and wished not for their deeds to be held scrutiny by the annals of history, alongside tales of heroes' honor and glory. But the winds of history blow strong, and ultimately no wall could be built tall enough to stay them. This work is a collection of all poems, songs, and legends that have survived from the aristocratic period, interspersed with archaeologists' commentary. Its purpose is to provide a new account of Mondstadt's history from the Age of Kings all the way through to the fall of the aristocracy. A degree of historical inaccuracy is inevitable, given that certain details are impossible to verify. We can but humbly hope that this work might elucidate the past for those who come after us, or perhaps inspire them to further investigate the facts of history on their own. This work is divided into 3 sections. Section 1, The Stormlord of the Tower and the King Wolf of Boris, covers the struggle between the kings of Ice and Frost prior to Barbatos' arrival. Section 2, The Cultivation of Mondstadt, covers Mondstadt's ancestors, including the aristocrats' predecessors, and the period during which agriculture developed. Section 3, Tyrants, Hares, and Rebels, covers the long reign of aristocracy in Mondstadt. The reader may wish for this work to serve as a cautionary tale to future generations. In fact, it was compiled with no such ambition in mind. The freedom bestowed upon us by Barbatos is also the freedom that allowed us to cast off the shackles of the past in search of the truth. My only hope is that this work, in spirit of openness and truth, may finally share with the reader those stories which it was forbidden to share in the past. Alright, so as you can see, this book has a very historical, materialist understanding of what occurred. And this is the prologue. There's not actually any other books in this series from what I know of. Most of the rest of the lore and like the sections it talks about are covered in completely different books. Like they are talked about, it's just, it's not in this series, which is interesting. They gave us a prologue and then nothing else. But as section 1 talks about, it talks about the Stormlord of the Tower. Decarabian, like, ruled his city with like an iron fist, and like the people could not leave because outside it would just be like cold. So they were completely subdued by this one king. And I'm pretty sure that was actually the god at that point, the Nemo Archon. But then Barbatos, which is like a wind spirit, and Gwenadier, the ancestors of Jean Gwenadier, overthrow this king, or this god actually. And this probably happens like literally maybe, but you know, this could just be like a foundation myth at the same time, where maybe there was not like just this one central Nemo Archon, but rather the land that was covered in frost, you know, through environmental changes, like wind just suddenly started blowing. They didn't need to huddle in this one city anymore, and they could expand and develop agriculture, which will transition the world into this new rule, which unfortunately has the aristocrats. So the aristocrats established like this new class society, and in addition they also use the Church of Barbatos in like their own name to oppress the people, and they also bring in slaves from other lands. So let me read one more story. And this is actually a historic romance novel. So part of this is fiction, but there is like a historic basis for this novel. So I'm going to be reading like the relevant paragraph, but this is the first volume of the Mondstadt Tower. So let us begin this tale by reading one paragraph in the middle of it. As she sang these verses, she handed out her earnings during the festival to the poor and orphans in the city. A frail figure stood among the crowd. He was Sneasel, and he fell for her at first sight. But his religious piety filled him with a frustration at his inability to suppress the emotions he was experiencing. And her acts of charity, which violated the church's right to aid the poor, irked him all the more. As is known to all, the beliefs of contemporary Mondstadters hold that the Nemo Archon Barbatos encourages people to seek love and pursue freedom. But in the Dark Ages, the Nemo Archon slept, and the city was tormented by the tyranny of the nobles, the poverty of the commoners, and the ravage of the dragon. Meanwhile, the self-proclaimed Orthodox Church, a mere figurehead controlled by the ruling class, advocated abstinence from earthly pleasures to avert divine punishment. Under such circumstances, even the harp, which symbolized the wind, had been restricted to playing only those songs deemed holy. However, the notion of divine punishment was little more than an excuse fabricated by the nobles to conceal their avarice and restrict the commoners. Can you believe that this was just a novel and it's in this game and it went that ham? That was basically the majority of this fictional story. But this happened in Honkai Impact 2, the webcomic at least, where one character condemns the aristocrats and the corrupt church to death with like haste that they condemned innocent people through, you know, class war on them. What I like about Genshin Impact is this is all ancient history. The aristocrats have been overthrown. In fact, it was led by a slave rebellion by the hero Vanessa. And Vanessa is a person of color woman who led a slave rebellion, overthrew the aristocrats, and then became a hero while working with the god Barbatos. Like, that's an insane legend. And she also ascended to Celestia. So, I mean, That's just very cool. And that speaks volumes to where Mondstadt is as it stands. And just to gush a little bit, like despite all like the grindy gameplay and repetitive things that you have to do in this game, it's this first introduction to the world and you realize like how magnificent it is. Like you see Vanessa's tree, which is like this beautiful tree that symbolizes this legend. It symbolizes this legend to even the people and the Grand Acting Meister, Jean, who's trying to live up to that spirit of, you know, freedom and fighting for what's right. It's just so symbolic in this game, where, like, I've been playing this game and I literally feel like, damn, I don't feel like I'm living in America anymore. I feel like I'm in this harmonious society in Genshin Impact. But you know, that's only a lingering feeling. It'll happen like maybe once or twice, and it does feel great, but then you realize, oh right, this is a video game. Yeah, and then you go back to gaming. But the fact that the game is able to do that is impressive. And exploring the second region, Liu, did that to an even larger extent for me personally. But that region, with its own history, completely separate from Mondstadt, and its own culture, its own society, you know, that's going to take a lot more work, so I'll leave that for another video. But now it's time to talk about how the story unfolds in present time as you play it. So several external threats have arisen in Mondstadt, one being the Fatui, and the Fatui literally have like a Tsarist regime, like no joke, they're led by the Tsar. So yeah, no political commentary there at all. And then there's the Abyss Order mages, which seem to just want to destroy humanity, and they take control of Storm Terror, the dragon you're fighting throughout this game. So this first prologue of the game, and like this is literally just the prologue, which isn't, you know, kind of incredible, is you defeat Storm Terror, who was possessed by these Abyss Order mages, and then Storm Terror reverts back to, you know, he was a guardian dragon before this called Dolvin. And Dolvin is one of the 4 winds that protects Mondstadt. The rest of the winds I kind of mentioned before, the Wolf of the North, Falcon of the West, which is Vanessa, and then the Lion of the South, which is, you know, the acting Meister, Jean at this moment. And Dolvin's history is there was this one disaster Mondstadt faced when a dragon called Durin attacked, and Dolvin killed that dragon, and apparently their corpse might still be on Dragonspine. So I'll be curious to see when that's added to the game. But it's interesting because Venti, who's been guiding you along this quest, who is the god Barbatos, he doesn't play really an active role in his like domain. He really does think that people should just act as they want, you know, be free. So he doesn't intervene, and like Mondstadt as it is, like there is the Church of Barbatos, but most of the people have actually become pretty like secular, and they don't even believe anymore in this Amenio Archon, which just shows how like little Venti or Barbatos has been intervening in the affairs. He does so in like this, you know, bard form of passing along songs and stuff. But Storm Terror was a pretty big deal, so he's gonna step in there, ask the Traveler for help. And it's interesting because Venti says that he doesn't necessarily need Dolvin to fulfill his duty of protecting Mondstadt. He's perfectly happy if this dragon, you know, would be free from that duty. But Venti says that he will not force his ideals of this freedom onto Dolvin, who is very duty-bound to this role, clearly likes protecting Mondstadt. And I think that's a pretty iconic line that Venti says that he will not force his ideals of freedom onto this dragon. Venti's lines here just hit really hard. You spent this prologue exploring the region Mondstadt, learning about its people, and you've gotten a feel for what freedom is here. Sure, they don't have the highest productive forces, this is a fantasy setting, so it's not like everyone is living like a rich life, but they certainly are free and they're not oppressed by a ruling class like they used to be in their history. In the contemporary real world, the word freedom is thrown around so loosely, and it's used as an attack word on any government that is not structured like a Western neoliberal democracy. I'm pretty sure this Chinese game is very aware of that, so they've gone about. They've built a world based on their concepts of freedom, which is much more free, mind you, than America right now. And some other pieces of advice Venti gives you is that you should enjoy the journey, emphasizing, of course, that the journey is more important than the destination. In a way, perhaps since this is the prologue, to suggest to the player that, you know, it's fine to just enjoy this journey, like, the updates are gonna come slowly. Like, take your time, enjoy the parts you like, or at least I feel like that's like an implied meaning from Venti here. But he's also sending you on your new journey to the second region in this game, Liu. So I'm pretty sure the region Mondstadt is supposed to feel like this more western, you know, area, and now you're on to the more oriental area. And yeah, this Chinese game is based. So good. I love it. And since the next region is based on the God of Contracts and is heavily market focused, it looks like it's inevitable that I will be talking about socialism with Chinese characteristics in this next video. So look forward to that if that's your thing. Now time for the YouTube thing, where I remind you to subscribe, like this video, and ring that bell. It'll really help out a lot.